So, Berto, I have some emails here, and I also just want to chat with you about the 12th year anniversary live stream that we did recently. What do you say, Berto? Let's answer emails and let's do a postmortem on the 12-hour live stream we did.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've had a long conversation. So yeah, let's do it.
This is the Psychology in Seattle podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist, and I'm also a professor. Who are you, Berto?
My name is Humberto Castañeda, and I make pink ice cubes.
So this first email is from patron Marta. She writes, any suggestions on or research on or your own insight on why immigrants discriminate against each other? And so, sorry, I'm answering. Okay. Any suggestions on why immigrants discriminate against immigrants in the United States? Berto, as an immigrant to the United States, what are your thoughts on this?
I can't speak for every community of immigrants. I can say that in my experience with some of the subsets of the Latin community, I especially saw this in Florida, by the way. And maybe they're outgrowths of what we left from where we came from. So when I was growing up in Colombia, there was always this feeling of like, look, I'm going to look after my family and like the people I know, and everyone else be damned. And it sounds cruel, but I think that sentiment was there because like society wasn't there seemingly to help you very much. And so if someone's like coming into your store and you don't know them, it's like, I don't know that, like how much does this cost? For you, probably double because I don't know you. So then I moved to this country, and I remember experiencing, especially when I would visit my aunt in Florida, this sense that like a lot of folks in the community almost were trying to make sure you didn't get ahead of them. And I think it comes from a place of scarcity. So like maybe leaving a place of scarcity and then feeling like, okay, no one's ever looking out for us, so we got to look out for each other, and we got to be on our toes because people are going to try to take our stuff. So that was my experience. That said, I also remember in New York when I was little, feeling like there was also a lot of that distrust. I remember a lot of little conversations and things amongst the adults, and areas you could go to and could not go to. And so I don't know, like my experience honestly has been that with the Latin communities in New York and Florida, that there was a lot, and this is a while ago, granted, but that there was a lot of distrust and almost people trying to like, muscle above the other to try to get ahead. And I can sort of understand because, like I said, that we came from a place of scarcity.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Other ideas are that racism exists in every society. And so if you, for example, come from Brazil or Colombia, it's not like those societies are not racist against black people, for example.
Right.
So if a Colombian or a Brazilian, not all of them obviously, but on average come to the United States, their viewpoint about white people is going to be different than their viewpoint about black people.
Yeah.
So that's just another reason. Another reason is that immigrants will assimilate the culture, the mainstream culture, to avoid being targets of victimization from a society. And one of the ways that you can actually assimilate is to adopt the culture's racist ideas. Especially if you can pass as a white person, if you're Polish or you're, from Russia or you're from, Uzbekistan or something, especially if you're second generation and you don't have an accent particularly, then you might have this, motivation to say, hey, I'm one of you. And I'm one of you. I look like you. I have an accent like you. I drive a car like you. And I'm racist like you. So please accept me into your mainstream society because I want all the benefits thereof. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's a lot of reasons why immigrants would discriminate against other immigrants in the U.S. All right, Berto, let's talk postmortem here. What does postmortem exactly mean, by the way? Do you know like the...
From the Latin, it means after death.
I know, but why would we call it a postmortem when we just, are talking about
well, it's like the patient or the patient has died, and now we're going to try to understand what happened. So our live podcast, 12-hour podcast died.
Yeah, but people use it in this context, right? They'll be
yeah,
like,
of course.
Totally. We just had an event, let's do a postmortem.
Yeah,
or is there another phrase that people use that I'm mixing this up with?
No, postmortem is absolutely right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Now, granted, it can have a little bit of a negative connotation, meaning like something didn't quite go according to plan. So we're going to have a postmortem. That happens a lot in the tech industry, like you have a project and then you do a postmortem. But it's not always negative. It's like it could just be because you're analyzing what worked, what didn't work, what you could do differently next time.
Maybe I just coming from Seattle and I'm around so many Microsofties and Amazonians and Facebookies. What are the words for the Facebooks people? And the
Facebookians.
and the Googleites, because we've been calling them Microsofties for 25 years. So I just figured that there should be other words, Anyway, so let's do a postmortem of something that went really well. We talked about this, Berto, but correct me if I'm wrong, because we kind of did a postmortem right afterwards. We continued having our scotch and our what you were drinking scotch, you were drinking Japanese.
I was drinking Japanese scotch, yeah.
And
I got a little hammered.
and we just hung out for a while. That this was the second funnest event we've ever done, which is saying a lot.
Yeah, that is. I wasn't expecting it, in a way, because I thought, well, we got to go through this. But I was looking at it a lot more like running a marathon, Like, I'm not going to do that well, but I'm going to get through it.
Yeah.
But it was really good. It was, I don't know. It was so positive for the most part. And people had, really supportive reactions. And I think we had some really interesting conversations. The little music bits were great. Yeah. For those who don't know, it'd be weird if you didn't, but we had a 12th year. We've been doing the podcast for 12 years this month in August, and we did a 12th year anniversary. And we always do, since the 10-year anniversary, we've been doing events. And we did a 12-hour live stream on YouTube. So Berto 12 hours.
Berto and I were in front of our cameras, live streaming for 12 hours straight with just bathroom breaks, of which we collectively probably had like 7 or something.
No, dude. Actually, I realized after the fact, I'm like, man, I need to have like little timers, because I only went twice. And each time it was like a racehorse. Like I was like, I didn't know I could hold so much fluid in my body. Not good.
Well, why? Like, were you just not feeling the pangs of having to pee, or what was going on?
I think because I'm sitting here, and this is a super comfy chair, and I'm like all excited about stuff. And time was flying. Like we commented on this a lot. So I didn't even notice. And the whole time I was sitting there drinking, like at first I drank my shake, even though I spilled some on my keyboard. And then I was drinking like lots of water. I kept having water. And so I didn't notice. But by the second, actually even the first time, I'm like, oh my gosh, I really should have gone sooner.
Yeah, I went a lot more often than you did. I remember that because I was drinking, I think, even more liquids. I had coffee and Coke and all these other things that cause.
That's hilarious.
But anyway, time flew by. I remember at the 4-hour mark thinking it felt like just 45 minutes had passed.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of it was that we always had something to do, right? Every hour I had, these set schedule of things to do. And so it was like, and I wonder if marathon runners feel this way, where you just one foot in front of the other, you just have this plan. And when you follow a plan, you don't really notice. Whereas if you're just sitting there and you're bored, you don't know what to do, or it's not very interesting, because I tried to plan a lot of things that you and I would get jazzed about. And so the time flew by.
Oh, actually, I can relate a little bit to that. So the most I've run, I haven't run a full marathon, but I ran 20 miles one time. And there were 7 miles of that 20 miles that flew by as opposed to the other ones. And the reason is because the scenery was spectacular for those 7 miles. And I think it had a huge impact because basically I was always like looking around and oh, look, an eagle. Oh, look, the horizon. Oh, the sunset, the thing. Whatever. It was just like all beautiful. And there were so many things to notice. And so I think I enjoyed it a lot more and time flew by. And then during our 12 hours, one of the things I kept commenting on, because every time you're like, okay, Berto, it's time for you to play another song. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I just played. It was just bizarre. I think that you're right, that the fact that we had regular things that we kept doing, they just kept coming up.
And it's a testament to, one, how much you and I can talk, and two, how entertained we are with each other. Because if it was someone else, I think I would have been kind of lolling off to sleep at times. But because we could have gone on more hours and probably been okay. But I will say that the last 2 hours, it got rough for me.
It got rough.
Like 10 hours in, I was like, man, this was easy. And then something happened around, 1.5 hours left, about, hour 10 and a half, that I remember my brain just starting to turn off. Because, your brain's, it runs out of juice, like fuel, and it gets overworked. And I was doing more brain power than you were because I was keeping track of all the little things and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, you were certainly doing a lot of thinking too, I could tell, but I think I was probably
Hey, you gave me a cognitive test, damn it.
Yeah. But it takes, anyway, the point is that I felt my brain turn off at a certain point. And so the next day, we woke up in the morning and was talking to Stacy about it, and my wife, because she was with us the whole time, which was interesting. And I asked her, I was like, so were you like emailing with people and stuff? Because I can't imagine that we were keeping your attention. She's like, no, I mean, 99% of the time I was just paying attention to what was going on. And I was like, wow, so for 12 hours, she just sat on the other side of my monitor, just being there with us the whole time.
Well, we had people there. We had listeners the whole time. Quite a few listeners the whole time.
Yeah, it seemed that maybe 30 plus individuals were there from minute one until 12 hours later. Yeah, it was
incredible.
Because we gave away swag to people who had all the answers, and there were like dozens of people who had all the answers. But anyway, but I asked Stacy, I said, so in the last couple hours, did it go off the rails? Because in my memory, because my brain had turned off, but I also remember Berto and I just started singing songs and stuff. Yeah. We pulled out our guitars and we were just like, okay, I'm going to sing a Smashing Pumpkins song now, and Berto's going to sing this other song. And so normally when I ask my wife questions like this, I can really count on her to err on the side of niceness. She'll be like, no, it was fine. There's so many times when I'm worried about something, and I'll ask her, I'll be like, so was that kind of dumb? She'll be like, no, it was fine. This time she's like, yeah, went off the rails in the last hour and a half. She's like, it completely went off the rails. You guys were, it wasn't as exciting. It wasn't as interesting in the last couple hours as it was the first 10. And I
saw a couple comments of people saying, like, oh, I love the songs at the end. And unfortunately, the stream that was posted, the last 2 songs we played, which were both, I think they were both Elliott Smith, got cut off.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, some people were really happy, that we went into that world. But I imagine there was a whole other group of people that were just like, now these two are just, playing solitaire with themselves, Anyway, so next time I want to do the same thing, but we're going to do 13 hours, obviously. But I want to incorporate more pictures, more videos, more guests, and I want to focus on Q&A because I feel like we didn't have enough Q&A, honestly.
And we needed one final a countdown that was maybe even our best one.
Right.
Because it's like we had great countdowns, and then the last hour we sort of didn't have one to do.
Right, yeah.
I think you did one about therapy and stuff, but like we needed one last big bang.
Crescendo, yeah. I need to plan something to do in the final half hour so that it doesn't just kind of peter out. Yeah.
Right.
I want to have awards, for important people like FPL and Colin and these people. But the thing I wanted to talk with you about today, Berto, do you have anything more to say about the 12-hour?
Well, actually, one thing that I thought was really interesting was that so there were a lot of things that as we were doing them, I was thinking, man, is this interesting? Like, how can this be that interesting? And I felt really self-conscious, like, this is really narcissistic. Like, we're just like, here's what I like. Here's my top 12 of this. Here's that. At the same time, though, like, because we intersperse commentary, and a lot of times I'm like, well, I like this because of this, because when I was a kid, I did this and that. And what I realized is, like, actually, this is a lot of the stuff that I enjoy too when I'm watching YouTube is I want to hear how people think, and I want to hear what they think about things. So sure, it is their opinions, but that's what I want to hear.
Yeah, there's a fine line between those two of having it being interesting to hear someone's opinion and being completely bored with someone's opinion. Do you know what I mean? So I think you and I have mostly figured that out over 12 years. Yeah. I don't know if we were that good at it 7 or 8 years ago. I think we're much better at it now.
And look, if it was entertaining 10 out of 12 hours, like, that's not bad.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, it felt good. I mean, the reasons why it was our second favorite event, we've had a number of events, but really 4 are the biggest. We had our very first live show 2.5 years ago. And that was our favorite event of all time because we didn't know if anyone would come. Yeah. Berto and I had never done anything like that before. We totally, I think, pulled it off. I mean, it didn't just go like, okay, it was amazing. I felt like we did a great job on stage. We had great chemistry. The crowd participation was amazing. The plan went really well. The after party, it was just a glorious moment of extravaganza of,
right.
And it was the first time we'd met really any of the listeners, and people flew from all over the world, from Ireland and California and Canada.
And it was a complex thing to pull off. I mean, you had like this arranged. It's not like you didn't think it all through. It was a well-structured plan. We did kind of go over it, but it's not like, I mean, yes, you and I have played in bands, and you and I do presentations. You teach all these kinds of things, but we don't like do live events. Like, that's not our thing.
Yeah, this was essentially like 70% stand-up comedy and 30% psychology.
Right.
And I have no experience in stand-up comedy, and so, or entertaining crowds, and
if you had framed it that way, like, I would have been like, I don't think we can do that.
Yeah, but it ended up being that way. Anyway, so that felt really good. Our second live show was basically a facsimile of the first, and it was also great, but it just felt like a lesser version of the first version. And then our third event was the 11-hour live stream, which was last year. And that was great. That was amazing. But there were a couple things that didn't go well because I just hadn't really gotten used to the form yet. And actually, the microphones were completely screwed up the entire time.
Oh, my God.
And I tried to involve, like, too much complexity, even though on paper it didn't seem that complex. Because people came over, right? And
we had guests.
We had guests that came over, and it seems like that shouldn't be a problem, but it just really threw me. And because the more
remember we were gonna actually go on location at one point.
Yeah,
it was the original ideas were like, oh, what? And then at one point we'll go get food, or we'll do this.
It always sounds like it's fun, but when I'm the only producer, I'm the producer, I'm the tech person, I'm tech support, and I'm the main, and I'm the agenda setter. I'm the main host, like it. So I learned from my mistakes, and for our 12-hour, I decided to have it be as simple as possible, and it was very simple. It was almost too simple. I think I could complicate it a little bit more.
And you delegated some things to me, like, okay, like, hey, write songs, come up with drawings, things like that.
Yeah, and you really rose to the occasion. I had no idea you were going to put so much heart and soul into the drawings and the songs. That was just amazing. But yeah, it felt good because another reason why it felt great is because, we have a lot of new YouTube fans. And so the live stream was convenient, because last year for the 11-hour live stream, we were basically trying to pull people away from podcast apps to YouTube. And so there were fewer people that were going to do that. Now we have people who only know us from YouTube. In fact, statistically, I would guess that 98% of the people that know about us only know us through YouTube.
Yeah. And a lot of them only know about you.
Right.
And so we had a couple of, actually, to be honest, it didn't happen as much as I thought it would. And it's probably because the people that would tune into a 12-hour thing are probably like the more longer term fans. But it did happen a few times where it's like, who is that person next to Dr. Honda?
Right. Exactly. But yeah, everyone was really great. And the number of people was, exhilarating. We had, I think, at any given moment, I think there was like 400 to 500 people, and we had, I think, tens of thousands of people overall, sort of dipping in and out. And
by the way, I love our community too overall, because there was a comment. I'm sure I don't know if you saw the comments in the repost, but one of the comments was, Dr. Honda, I love your videos, but this was just a cringe fest or something like that, or this was just cringeworthy. And then like eight replies going like, what are you talking about? Like totally came to our defense. Oh yeah, I love the doc's videos, but man, this whole thing was awkward and cringy. And then all the replies are like, for the old viewers, this is normal. And the commenting videos is the new thing. And the other is like, you must be new here. Two good friends having a whale of a time. What's so cringy about it? And then like on and on. It's like, I just love that. It's like, yeah. Now, of course, people are entitled to their opinion. And of course, if you came for a specific thing and that's not what you wanted, of course. But I thought that overwhelmingly positivity came out of the people participating.
What would possibly be cringy about it?
It's improvised. It's not I have no idea.
I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it must be that they were expecting it to just be me being like a stuffy professor, I suppose.
Maybe, but I mean, you're not. I wouldn't say you're a stuffy professor in your other videos.
I know.
Like, and so, if anything, sorry, but like the content you're reviewing, that's awkward and cringy. Like those TV shows are awkward and cringy. But anyways, whatever.
Yeah, I mean that hurts to have someone like comment publicly that our 12-hour anniversary show was cringy for them. Like they're like ashamed of me or something. Like what? Why?
Right. But it was one comment and quickly rebutted by 8 people. And all the other comments were like, I'm so glad you guys uploaded this. Like,
because I don't read a lot of the comments because of those bad ones. I can't sleep at night when I read those bad ones.
Like all the comments are positive. That's the only one.
Okay.
Like, you guys are savages. The courage you have to tell about your most embarrassing moments. Love interacting with you guys. Made my work from home day much more exciting.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll be able to sleep at night.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the amount of people, it was great. The fact that I had ironed out all the wrinkles from previous, iterations of this event. The fact that I didn't have to do an after event. So that was, because of the pandemic, and also I think I would have opted for this anyway. This was the first time we didn't do a live after, because even after the 11-hour live stream, we had an after event.
That's right.
And after events, like in-person events are so stressful for me to plan because I have to get a venue. I have to figure out, is it conducive to parking?
And that's a liability, honestly. Like even last year, I had fun, but it's a liability.
Yeah, I mean, it particularly it's a liability for both of us. For me, it's a liability because one, I have to decide where it's going to be, and I don't want to have to shell out thousands of dollars for a venue and pay employees and everything if I don't know who's coming, and I don't want to charge tickets. It's a liability because I don't know if anyone wants to come. It's a liability because after these 11 hours, I just want to relax. I just don't want to have to think. But it's a liability for you because you're Mr. Entertainer. And so when we go to these live events, like you take on the role of it, because in my head, whenever I think about these after events, I think, okay, we're going to get together and we'll just chill. It'll just be relaxing. But no, you and I show up and everyone wants to talk to us naturally.
Yeah.
And they maybe flew in from out of town or at least drove in from out of town. And I feel obligated to entertain everyone. So do you. Yeah. I mean, particularly you, because you're just better at that. And so we go from 11 hours of live streaming to even more intense, social extroversion, socializing.
Yeah. It's hard.
Trying to make everyone feel like we interacted with each person. Yeah. And so now, having said that, those events were wonderful in a lot of ways. Hallie was there, Zach was there, Bree was there, Laurie was there. It was great to actually meet people face to face, and people were great, and they didn't put any pressure on us, but Taylor was there. Anyway, it was stressful for me. Anyway.
Yeah.
But this time we just, jumped off of the live stream and you and I just kicked back, had some snacks.
Yep.
Talked,
and
just
reminiscing.
Yeah. And so that was really great too.
Looked at pictures. We looked at pictures.
Right. We looked at old pictures and stuff. Anyway, but this leads me to the other thing I want to talk about, because one of the things that you've been working on for a while now is your own YouTube channel.
That's right.
And you and I have had, some conversations about what are you going to do with your YouTube channel? And because there's so many options, right? Because you're a big YouTube consumer. You
very big, yeah.
Me too. You listen, you watch a lot of, and have been a lot of different political, video games, nerd stuff, movies, just every science. You've been paying attention to various different YouTube, mini culture developments over time. And so in the beginning, you started with your YouTube channel talking about a TV show that you liked.
A year ago. That's why I wanted to start it. I had seen this TV show, and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to talk about this with Kirk, but I couldn't get you interested in watching it. And plus, I just had to get it out. And it was a pretty lewd TV show anyway. So I was like, damn it, I'll just make a video. And that's how it started. Yeah.
And then you started doing videos about nerd stuff like He-Man.
80s things I loved, yeah.
Yeah. And they were kind of like mini essays in a sense. They weren't just you going like, He-Man, da-da-da. You were you had kind of an artsy approach to the whole thing. And then you kind of put the YouTube channel on pause for a while.
Yeah.
And then the Psychology in Seattle YouTube channel took off with reaction videos that I was making. And then you started making reaction videos to my reaction videos.
Right. The way I started was actually because someone made a reaction video to your reactions. It was this Uber fan from Germany or something. And someone linked it on Facebook, and I was like, That's bizarre. So I decided I was going to make a reaction video to their reaction video of your reaction videos.
Yeah.
So that's the first one I posted. And then that got me interested in, like, I did a reaction to the launch to the moon. And then I was like, well, what if I reacted? Because we talked about Ed and Rose in one of the episodes. So I was like, maybe I could react to his reaction of Ed and Rose. So I did a few. I think I did 3 reactions to your videos.
Yeah. But during the 12-hour live stream, there were a few things where I thought afterwards and during, wow, this is something that is unique to you that could potentially be really wanted and needed on YouTube. The first thing is you
holding my pee in for 12 hours.
That actually there probably is just a guy staring at the camera and
I gotta go.
Yeah,
Really gotta go.
is writing music. The process, because you wrote 12 songs for the 12-hour show, and occasionally, maybe half the time, we would have a little conversation about, like, how did you write that song and what were you thinking? And and you wrote those 12 songs in a very short amount of time. It was like one day or something that you wrote them all.
It was. I wrote basically 9 songs on Sunday, the previous Sunday, and then I wrote the remaining ones on the Monday, and then I practiced them for the remainder of the week just so I could, get through them.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing because each one of the songs was different. The lyrics were different. They sounded like fully fledged chords and melodies. They weren't just rudimentary songs that one would record if you had to come up with a song very quickly.
Sure.
So I was thinking, and it's obviously it's up to you, and we've talked about this briefly, but I want the listeners to chime in about this. For Berto to make YouTube videos, like there could be all sorts of different formats, but a few of the YouTube channels that I like is basically to observe the construction of something. So you would film, you pick up your guitar, your piano, and you say, okay, someone emailed me and they said to write a song about this topic, and they want me to make it in this style. And then you go, well, okay, Elton John style. Okay, Elton John style, and it has to be about deforestation. Okay, well, what am I gonna do here? Well, right. Elton John likes to do a lot of this stuff on piano, but Elton John also likes to do this. And you can see your gears turning. And you're like, well, if I did this, and then you turn off the recording. We'll come back in about an hour, and you turn it off, and then you turn it back on, and then you're like, okay, I came up with this because I thought this would go well, and this idea about deforestation and about like Saturday nights, I'll write for fighting trees or something. And so I decided to do that. And I think I might be, but I don't like this. So maybe if I do, okay, I'll come back in another hour, and you turn it off. Like, I could see people being totally fascinated with that because the results of your songwriting is just so interesting. Like they're so, I don't know what to say. Like they're so, sort of dynamic. The end results of what you make is so it's not boring. The stuff that you write is very dynamic and sort of melodically interesting and rhythmically interesting and lyrically interesting, that I could see people just totally being on board with that. And then you could sprinkle in your personality. You could be like, right, well, as a Latin guy, I like to do a little bit of this, and then and then you can even do screenshots of using your recording software and putting in a drum track. I mean, people will just eat that crap up, I think. Yeah.
No, I think I think I had mentioned to you before that was one of the ideas I had. I had sort of parked it because I don't know why. But anyways, I was pleasantly surprised and humbled at both your reaction. And let me put it this way. I was pretty sure you'd be supportive no matter what I wrote. But when I went through and I started writing them, I wasn't initially I wasn't trying to write like really great songs or something. I was like, all right, 12 songs, 12 keys. I'm going to write one per each key, 30 seconds, go, right? But I think I mentioned as I started doing it, my little songwriter in me kicked in, and I was like, well, trying to make it sound good, so maybe I'll do this and do that. And so I was pleasantly surprised. I was also actually, it was sort of a prototype of this type of thing that you're saying. Because in my mind, I was thinking, well, when Kirk asked me to play the songs, I'll play the songs and then we'll move on with the content. But I didn't expect that I would talk a little bit. In fact, you encouraged, like, you might want to describe what the song's about. And as we started doing that, I realized, oh, this is kind of interesting. And yeah, so I agree. It's something that I love doing. I think it could work well. So I'm going to give it a go.
I think it's absolutely playing to your strengths. And there are other, as you say, YouTube channels that do this sort of thing, but no one would do it like you would do it. Yeah,
obviously I'll lean into it because look, there's a billion like amazing jazz players and piano players, all these things. So obviously I'm not going to be like, here, watch my amazing chops. It's really about what's the songwriting process and how does one take a burst of creativity and turn it into something with structure. And like you said, a little bit of like my personality and my stories and things like that.
Yeah. So I mean, do you know of any YouTubers that are doing that sort of channel? Because I don't know about anyone who does songwriting like processes and sprinkles in their own. I don't know anyone who does songwriting. I'm sure it exists, but there's a lot of people playing drums or piano, or they analyze music.
So there are, but they're more advanced. It's like jazz. Like there are some that I've watched that are jazz, and they'll explain how to, they'll be like, look, I'm going to start with this theme and I'm going to add these jazzy transitions, and now I'm going to make it more complex, which is super interesting. So I would just be approaching it from like, I'm just going to write like a pop song, like a 3-minute pop song. And I'm actually not even going to write the whole 3 minutes. I'm just going to write like verse and chorus kind of thing, kind of like what the exercise was.
Right.
I think it's fun. I think if it were well done, I would watch it, I've wanted to do it before. This is great. Like, this gave me the opportunity to do a prototype of it. I think it worked well enough. So,
because I think, talking about, and this is, your channel is yours, but I think you talking about TV shows, on paper, it seems like it would work, but it seems like it's maybe too general or something, or it was too niche or something, or I don't know.
No, that was the conclusion I reached. So first of all, I first thought, oh man, if Kirk is reacting to these videos and that gets a lot of views, should I react to these videos? But I decided against it for two reasons. One is, well, you have an angle. The way you do it, you have an angle. You're a therapist, a relationship therapist, and these are relationships. So I was like, okay, well, that's already a gimmick, like a good gimmick, number one. Number two, like, I don't know for how it is for you, but for me, it was actually kind of painful to get through the whole Ed and Rose watching thing. So I was like, I don't know if this is what, like, is this what I want to do? Whereas reacting to your videos was a little different, because it's like, it's like, how do you call it? Like outtakes from a thing, it's like, here, if you're really into psychology in Seattle and you want to watch Berto's outtakes of this thing, here's a couple of nuggets. And I could see myself doing that from time to time because it's kind of fun. But I'm mostly like piggybacking on something you did or said or whatever, right? And then I thought, well, what about other stuff? And I actually even joked with one of the listeners. I was like, with Bronwyn. I was like, I got it. I'm going to react to like Richard Feynman lectures in black and white. And then, I was thinking, well, what if I did react to weird things? But what I concluded was, if I really feel strongly about something, like I felt strongly about the protest thing, so I reacted to something. So maybe I'll do that from time to time. But I wasn't sure, like I wasn't feeling it. The things that have worked well, that I felt like this is me speaking honestly, are whenever I have a topic. So I've had a few videos like that I made in the last couple of months, which were, I'm going to talk about fear, or I'm going to talk about goals, I'm going to talk about dreams, and I've made a few of those. And it's mostly what I do in our podcast, which is I talk about my experiences, what I failed with, what I've tried to do, how I'm dealing with it now, with the hope that it'll help someone, right? But I think this angle is like its own thing. And I don't know if it becomes its own channel or if it's like a playlist at first and then maybe its own thing. I don't know. I'm going to try it though. I think you're onto something. I feel like it's worth a shot.
Yeah. The other thing I think is worth a shot and we've talked about this briefly, is you playing video games. Now, there are a billion Twitch streamers and YouTube people who play video games. So that's a harder situation to get into. But the reason why there are so many people doing it is because there's such a huge market for it.
Yeah.
I probably 10% of the videos I watch on YouTube is probably watching other people play video games.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I love strategy games, and so I'll watch people play City Skylines for an hour, or there's this one guy who does these weird challenges on Grand Theft Auto 5 where he tries to hide in cars from like 30 different other people. And they have to try to find, and he could be anywhere. He could be driving around like a bot, like the way the bots drive, or he could just be in a bush somewhere, and they have to try to find him. And so, and I'll watch that for like an hour and a half. And so anyway, there's just a lot of a big market for that. And I think what your niche is one, you have a lot of experience playing and sort of knowing the gaming industry. And you're a personality. So like, say you're playing the newest Zelda Twitch game or something. A Switch game. And as you're playing, you just start telling stories. And you play it for a half an hour. There's a huge market for that, just to watch you play a game anyway, and to watch someone, and especially if it's a new game, right, that people might want to buy. And you're and you're trying it out. I don't know how exciting that is for you, but it'd be pretty easy. You just have to turn on the recorder and play a game.
So I like I said to you the other day, I don't think there's any harm with me trying several things, because I think, oh, by the way, after the podcast, I think I was like at 120 subscribers. I'm like at 180. So it's like 60 people signed up. So like the point is, like, I don't, my channel is fledgling. It's teeny. So I don't lose anything in trying things, It's not like I'm going to lose half my subscribers.
Right.
These are very loyal subscribers. So there's definitely no harm in trying things. The only reason I was hesitating is because with the music thing, A, it's an idea I've had. B, I think we just tried it and it sort of worked. Like, obviously in a different format, but close to it. And C, I would love to do it. Like, I feel excited about it. With the video games thing, what's tough is, first of all, I'm not a good video gamer. Like, I'm okay at certain things, and I do play games on hard and stuff like that. But I'm not gonna. No actual really good video gamer is gonna watch me play, going like, "Ooh, I can learn from this dude." So my angle would have to be a little different. And maybe you're onto something that, for example, I've never played Fortnite. I've never played Overwatch. I've never played any of these kind of quote unquote newer games. So maybe my angle is actually like Mr. Noob over here trying these games and commenting on it and see if that's interesting. I could record a few trial episodes and, love your opinion, put them up, see if it gets a reaction. That's definitely a thing. The other angle I actually thought about, and it might be more niche, but maybe that's not a bad thing, is actually playing really old, like my color computer games, and maybe really old PC games.
Yeah.
That might be, because then I don't have to be good. Like, I just it's a different point.
Yeah, you could just play all Atari games or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other idea I had was, we have these big aspirations of doing our Star Wars reaction videos, right?
Right.
And so we made one episode of us watching like the first half hour of episode 1, which is Phantom Menace. And we thought, well, we're going to go through all the Star Wars movies. Well, we recorded that 4 months ago or something. And
really?
I don't know, or two and a half months ago, who knows. We recorded another episode and I lost the video. So I couldn't.
That's so heartbreaking, because it was good.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah. But I think we should, I'm going to throw this out here. I think we should skip to episode 9.
Okay.
Because have you watched it since it came out in the theater? When
no,
we saw it?
I have not.
So you and I went to see it opening night, and you didn't like it that much, and I hated it. And I would love to rewatch it again.
Yeah, actually, that's a good idea.
And maybe if I try to remain open, it'll be an emotional process, but I think we should just jump to episode 9.
We should do it, dude.
And react to it.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
I'd like that. I don't mind finishing episode 1 sometime, but it is sort of it's not a timely thing for us to be doing.
Right. And not as emotional, right? Because
that's true.
you were disappointed by that movie
We've
20 years ago.
that.
Yeah. But
I've actually kind of come out the other side. I'm like,
right.
I'm still disappointed, son, but
It's not that bad. But episode 9, I mean, this was just, 8 months ago it came out. But
yeah.
Okay. So let's take a break. When we get back, let's answer some patron emails. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right, we're back from the break. So if Jar Jar Binks was to ask people to become a patron of the podcast, what would he sound like? Have I already asked you to do that? No, let me do it.
No, you should never ask me to invite the patrons.
Well, Jar Jar, convince the non-patrons listening right now to become a patron. Well, please.
You, sir, if you walk around with duty on your head, you don't know how to live. You, sir, become patrons of the podcast. We, sir, recommend good ways to clean poopies off your shoes and your head. Become patron.
How rude. All right.
How rude.
Patron Sured from the Netherlands writes, I split with my ex 2 years ago. She really wants to stay friends, but I still have deep feelings and hurt when I see her name or picture. How do I deal with these feelings? Berto or Jar Jar, what do you think?
Wait. That's a tough one. So, do you think it's a matter of, not knowing how to process that? Or, do you think it's not having anyone to talk to about it?
I don't know, all the above. I mean, 2 years ago, and she still wants to be friends, and he has deep feelings and longing and then hurt whenever and how do I deal with these feelings, he says.
Yeah, because I mean, I had a feeling like that for a long time after my first real big breakup. But I had friends that I could talk to, and I had friends that could tell me repeatedly, dude, you gotta stop, you gotta just forget about it or whatever. And that helped. Granted, I'm sure it wasn't the most psychologically sound advice to just pull yourself up by the bootstraps. But at the same time, there was a sense of man, the world's keep going. You can't just spin in a circle. So I feel having people to talk to, maybe it's a therapist, maybe it's friends, maybe it's both. And also airing it that's an idea. Writing about it, or maybe even making a video about it, or, putting it out, right? Do some art, do some writing, do some, get your feelings out on paper, essentially.
Yeah. To piggyback on that is just to do what you can to heal and grieve. Go to therapy, and it takes time. People will say dude, it's been 2 years. You're still busted up. What's wrong with you? Or you might, shame yourself. I'm here to tell you that there's going to be, 1 to 5 breakups in your life that will last you your entire life.
Yeah.
Up until the last moments of your existence, there is going to be busted up feelings about those relationships. And we have this notion in our society that, time heals all wounds and you move on, and, maybe you grieve for a few months, but, you get over it and you move on. That's not going to happen unless you were the one that dumped them or the relationship just didn't really, get under your skin. We are biologically evolved to attach, and our biology doesn't play ball when we're trying to just forget, It's like trying to convince yourself that you're not hungry or that you're not thirsty or that you don't need sleep. Our bodies don't just say, well, I don't want to dwell in the past. It sticks with us. And so it just might be one of those things. So part of it is just grieving and going through that process, which takes time and takes effort. You actually have to put effort into it, talk about it, feel the feelings, as Berto's saying, create something. What's the meaning of it? Go to therapy, reminisce, do all the things that you would do as there's a loss.
Yeah.
So there's that. The other question here that a lot of people might pose, which is, well, maybe you shouldn't be friends with her. A lot of people will say that. It'll be like, if they heard this question, they'd be like, well, don't be friends with her if you have hurt and deep feelings when you see her. That's boundaries. You need to have boundaries. Now, if you want to have quote unquote boundaries, then go for it. If you don't, if overall you're like, yeah, I want to be friends, but overall it's not a good idea for me, so I'm just going to cut myself off from her because it's too hard to hang out with her, which would be totally normal. And so just because she wants to be friends doesn't mean you have to be friends. Having said all that, there's no right answer to that, even though everyone will probably tell you to not be friends with her. Life is messy, and sometimes the messy route is the better route. Being friends with her can facilitate some level of well-being and trust. You can learn that, she's a good person, and I guess she just wasn't into me. No harm, no foul. And I still get to have at least kind of a relationship with her, which actually makes me feel good. And being friends with her gives me a chance to vent my feelings to her. 2 years down the line, I get to say, by the way you broke up with me really hurt my feelings. And then she can apologize. There's a lot of opportunity there. But the main thing is I would just check in with yourself periodically to say, like, are the pros outweighing the cons of this friendship? Because if it's not, then maybe cutting yourself off from that person would be good. Because it's certainly, you'll talk with some people and they will still be friends on Facebook, or they'll still be following on Instagram, or they'll still be hanging out in the friend group or something. And like I said, that there's pros and cons to that, but there can be really bad cons to that sort of lifestyle, where it just this constant dagger in your side of the loss. It can be tough. So I just check in with yourself periodically.
I gotta say, like, I get ghosted. I've gotten ghosted quite a bit now that I think about it, from friends that I had, girls that I was friends with that, we either had some tension or maybe we had, messed around or something. But then at some point they got like a new relationship, and it was a serious relationship. And then like they didn't trust me to just be friends maybe or whatever. So just dropped like a bad habit. And it always hurts me so much, because this hurts me with guys and girls. I don't get, like, in my head, it's hard for me to understand being like friends with someone and sharing experiences and all these things, and then one day being like, I'm done. I don't communicate with this person. So for me, cutting someone off would be difficult, unless it's like, and I guess maybe that's the threshold, unless it's like really hurting me or something like that. But if it's just like, I was friends with you, but now out of convenience for my mental state of mind, I'm going to cut off. For me personally, that'd be a little tough. It just happens to be that I've never had to deal with that too much, because either people move away or I don't see them again or whatever. So, like in the case of my girlfriend that I was talking about, it was a high school girlfriend. It was like my first real serious in love thing. And she was so into me. She would write me all these notes and all these love things and just tell me how awesome I was. And then when it turned hard. And it was so ridiculous. I couldn't even get her to sign my yearbook. I never understood why. I was like, hey, yearbooks came. You want to sign my yearbook? And she was like, yeah, of course. But I mean, there'll be time for that. Don't worry. I'm like, oh, sure. And then like 2 days later, hey, you still haven't signed my yearbook. Do you sign? Oh, we'll get to that. Don't worry. Like, there'll be plenty of time. Never signed my yearbook. Why? What did she know? Did she, it's so bizarre. Like, I'll never forget that. Like, and that was like a little micro symptom of like the end, and that stayed with me, So yeah, it's hard. It's hard, but eventually you gotta make a choice. And if the choice is you're gonna stay friends, you gotta be able to deal with it and like refocus. If it's too hard, if it's too heavy, then yeah, I guess you have to find a way to transition out of that relationship.
Another email similar from patron Ina. She writes, I'm 26 and my high school boyfriend that I had in high school just recently contacted me asking me how I'm doing. In high school, he dumped me by ghosting me after 3 years of dating, but I would see him in the hallways and he would just ignore me.
Oof.
This caused me to be extremely depressed, and it was really hard to get over it for many years, actual depression. Now that I have moved on and have completely different life, I am getting really triggered by his messages because I had to believe over the years that I was just never going to hear from him again. I believed this so strongly that it's even been hard to wrap my head around the reality that he is now contacting me. I'm afraid that if I ask him questions about why he ghosted me, he'll blow up at me and reject me all over again, and I might spiral back into a deep, deep depression. How can I better communicate so we both can learn more about each other and heal from the trauma? Berto, what do you think?
Wow. First of all, as someone who unbelievably and disgustingly ghosted someone, mostly phone-wise, when I was in high school, I feel terrible. I'm sorry. I apologize in this person's behalf, on this person's behalf. I am sorry. I'm sorry to the person I did this to. I'm sorry to you. It's horrible. But I would certainly try to draw a boundary, I think, because, it's one thing if the person wants to like make amends and maybe you want to, if you're interested in hearing an apology and that might make you like heal from that. In my case, the girlfriend in question who I had ghosted, meaning I was not returning their calls, a year later, she swung by my house and she just wanted to let me know that she had gotten over it, that she basically wanted to tell me off a bit, which was totally in her right to do. She told me, and she wanted to let me know she was engaged to someone. She was pretty young to be engaged, but whatever. I think that gave her some closure. It certainly gave me some closure because instead of like years later being like, oh my gosh, I got to find her and apologize. I'm like, nope, I got my chance to apologize. If she never sees me again, I'm sure that will be perfectly fine with her. In this case, he never got closure, you never got closure, but that's up to you. I think if it's going to do more harm than good for him to be at all in your thing, just block him, just ignore it, just put it aside. That's my thing.
Yeah. Other things I'll say is go to therapy because it sounds like it's not just minor, grief that you're experiencing. You're talking about deep, deep depression. I mean, that sounds very concerning. And you're actually using the word trauma, which I'm guessing is purposeful. And so go to therapy because depression can kill people, through suicide and other kinds of things. So make sure you go to therapy. The other thing I'll say is that you're wise to worry about re-traumatization and be careful because as you head in, if you do communicate with him, there is a chance of re-traumatization. Maybe he ghosts you again. Maybe he's mean to you. Maybe he tries to start something up with you again and then breaks up with you again. And it can be re-traumatizing. So, don't just fall headlong into communicating with him with, blinders on. The other thing I'll say is that there is an opportunity for healing here. And if you feel up for it, if you're in therapy, if you predict that things might go well, communicating with him might actually produce a lot of wonderful conversations and a wonderful opportunity to heal and a way to express your feelings. The specific question you're asking is, how do I communicate? What I would recommend is to kind of work in phases where in the beginning, because a lot of this depends on what his intentions are and what he is up for doing. What I would recommend is one, talk with your therapist about this because depression and suicide are a real risk here. And as you do that, maybe consider in phase one, it's like, well, if I'm up for communicating and I predict with my therapist that things will go well enough, let's just communicate a little bit and let's see what he's up for. Because, if he's up for communicating indefinitely or some, long-term manner, then that tells me one thing. But let's say he just wants to text with me 1 or 2 times and then he's going to ghost me again. Then, okay, then I know that. So phase 1 is like figure out what's going on. And that would be light conversation, just be like, oh, okay, it's been a long time no see. How's it going? And a little check-in. And then if he proves to himself, to you, that that he is willing to engage more long-term, phase 2 would be something like, so I've had a lot of things on my mind over the last number of years that, I don't know, I'd just like to get your perspective on. And what do you say? So he might say, I don't want to rehash the past. Then, okay, but if he's up for it, then you say, okay, well, so I have these questions as to, you just ghosted me and you ignored me in the hallways. I mean, I don't know if that's your perception. Maybe you didn't see it that way, but that's how I saw it. And it really hurt my feelings. You're 26 years old now, so it was a long time ago. What do you remember happening? Now at that point he might say like, you're crazy. I don't remember that happening at all. You're doing it all over again, just like in high school. You blame me for it. That's why I ghosted you, is because you're a B word. So be ready for that. Or then he ghosts you because he's afraid of the confrontation, which is a reason why people ghost, which is why Berto ghosted. But you go into it sort of, well, I don't know what he's going to do. I'm going to throw this out there and maybe he'll ghost me again. So you're preparing yourself with your therapist. But let's say he engages. Okay, now let's go to phase 3. Now let's actually be vulnerable and say, so let's meet up in person because I want to yell at you for about a good half hour and probably 10 times because I'm angry about what you did to me. Depression, one way of looking at depression is anger turned inward and not allowed to express itself. And sometimes being angry outward will stave off depression. And being angry directly at the source of your pain is potentially good for your mental health. I don't know. You would talk to your therapist about this. But it is also just. This guy deserves to be yelled at. Now, it happened 10 years ago. Regardless, he did something that was terrible, and he deserves to be yelled at. Now, he doesn't deserve to be verbally abused or made to be afraid, but he does deserve to apologize up and down, to know how it affected you, and to be given a chance to apologize from his standpoint. So there can be a lot of healing and a lot of wonderful things that can happen there. Now, getting to you people out there that, right now, people listening, think about everyone you've dumped in the past. Berto, the woman you ghosted, you dumped her. Mm-hmm. What do you need to do to make it right? Because it's not just about us as victims, it's us as perpetrators. What do you need to do? Do you need to reach out to an ex from high school and say, I'm sorry for ghosting you? Do you need to reach out to them and say, I was so immature and stupid back then, and I'm sorry for what I did? Do you need to be doing that? Or if somehow you strike up a mild DM situation with an ex, and your ex starts to ask you questions like, why'd you ghost me? Do you have an opportunity to apologize? Ethical breaking up with someone involves doing your part to help the person you're dumping cope with what's happening to them. The goal, and it's not always possible because there's so many different, manifestations of this, but as you head into the process of dumping someone, a lot of people will just be like, well, I told them I broke up with them, and, I'm done. I'm walking away. Well, for you, you've been dealing with the fact that you're going to dump them for 6 months. When you dump them, now begins their grieving process. And so they were with you while you were going through the grief process unknowingly. And now you should do your part to be with them if they want you to. Maybe they don't want you to be a part of their life after you break up with them. But if they do want to interface with you, Listen to their anger. Be there for them to explain, no, I did love you. I just fell out of love with you 3 months ago. But for the first 3 years of our relationship, it was real. It wasn't all a lie. Even though you're saying that, it wasn't. But I don't know why I fell out of love with you. I just did. And you might have to say that many, many times to get it through their head, because the goal is you want that ex to walk away from that relationship with the opportunity to have a narrative that the relationship was real, and at some point, unknown to them, your love turned a corner, and that began the hard, difficult process for you to make the decision to break up. And then you broke up partly out of an effort because you didn't want to be with that person anymore, but also you wanted to altruistically release your partner so that they could date other people. And it was a good act that you did. It was difficult for you to do, and you feel bad, and you care about that individual. People out there, how many people out there listening have stories about exes that are negative? That person never cared about me. They used me. They never loved me. Well, I'm guessing it's because they broke up with you in a way that did not give you the opportunity to develop a positive narrative of what happened. Now, some people are a-holes and there's just no way around it, but most people aren't. So if you are in a position of breaking up with someone, it might mean enduring them being angry a number of times and being irrational. But once they get through that period, you will have done your duty to help that person recover from a massive loss. And that is the moral thing to do.
You said duty.
Next email. Patron Francis from California says, duty, duty, poopy, poopy. No, wait. I have a lot of traumas involving my parents that I've been able to identify and heal from over the years. A part of me feels that I won't be able to let go of lingering resentment until I sit down with my parents and talk it out. But I'm hesitant because, one, my parents have never been communicative with me, and two, they are in their 60s, and I'm worried I will only stress them out by bringing any of this up. What is your opinion on gaining this kind of closure? Berto, the reason why I presented this email to you is because, I don't know, I felt like you'd kind of relate.
Yeah, definitely. So I've tried. I've done a little bit of this with both my mom and my dad. With my mom, we went one time years ago, we went to a lunch, maybe like a decade ago or something, where she talked to me about her leaving me and about the circumstance surrounding that and everything. I feel, and maybe it was longer ago, I don't know, it was 15 years ago, I don't know. I felt at the time that this was more therapeutic for her than it was for me, because it was sort of like the way she presented it was, basically explaining why she felt she had to do it, and then kind of talking about the things she talked with her therapist about and things like that.
What did she say?
Well, it was all to do with my dad and the fear she had of my dad, and essentially that if she took me, that she was afraid for her life. And, maybe. I mean, I guess she did feel that way.
But no effort to be a part of your life at all?
Oh, she did. It's just it took a while. And she was, it was... So, do I doubt that she was legitimately scared about my dad? No, I don't doubt that. Do I think she should have? That relationship did need to end? Yeah. Look, and then the other thing is, it's really hard to second guess history. Like, if I hadn't ended up with my dad, things would be very different, and we don't know if it's for the best or not. But what I will say is, if I were in the same situation, if I had to leave a painful relationship, I feel like I would go to the ends of the earth, even at the peril of my own skin, to try to maintain a relationship with my child.
Or at least try to communicate that you're sorry. You're like, she could have called you every day and said, so by the way, I'm still with you. I still love you. But little
Right.
Beto, there's circumstances that are out of your control, but
Right.
just
So
know that I go to bed every night thinking about you. Like she could have lived on the other side of the planet and still called you every day or wrote you letters every day, but she didn't.
Yeah. Right. So the communication came later and not frequently enough. And I agree with you. So what I haven't had is an opportunity. Well, I tried that time to explain, but it's, my mom has her own, I think she's a certain kind of individual. And I don't think she heard me. And now what happens? And then with my dad, I certainly, for many years and many different ways, tried to have all sorts of different conversations with him. And we did. And there were times where I definitely let him know in no uncertain terms that he had disappointed me and that he had, kind of derelicted his duty, so to speak. But still, also with my dad, he's his own kind of individual. And so when I have a conversation with him about these things, he's very aware of it and he'll admit it. But that's about it, and he'll apologize. So I don't feel like I've ever really gotten closure, and maybe it's impossible. I do think there's another conversation I need to have with my mom, but there's also I have to do a calculation in my mind about pain versus the benefits and the price that I pay for it, because I have a good relationship with my mom these days. It's been that way now for the last decade. She's very supportive. She's so I don't know. We have a close relationship now, and inevitably, me bringing things up to have serious, deep conversations where I need to heal, it's gonna make that stressed, and so then part of me goes like, how much is it worth to me now? Like, I have a comfortable situation, and I'm no longer acting out on a weekly basis based on my trauma. So, but it's a tough calculation. And then with my dad, the thing that I regret the most about my dad is that, because I support him financially, and I have now for, I don't know, almost my entire adult life. And the thing I really regret not understanding, not knowing it, that no one really, I don't know, I guess my aunt tried, but I didn't really get it, is that when he was much, much younger and I was much, much younger, I could have said no. I could have said, no, I'm sorry. I love you, but you're on your own. And that would have been better for him. And then what ended up happening is year after year, I would tell myself, well, maybe I could have done that last year, but now it's this year. Or maybe I could have done that 5 years ago. And so now, he's 75, 76. He's got health problems, all these things. So now I do the math and I'm like, well, I guess the boat really did finally leave that dock. But I could have done this 10 years ago. So I always kicked myself about that. And I have had those conversations with him, but never to the point where I'm like, you finally get it. And I finally feel free. It's tough.
Yeah. I don't know. You could have, and always can, draw that boundary financially with your dad, obviously, as you know. Yeah. But the perspective, I've never heard you say that you feel like it would have been better for him if you had not done that. That is not clear, because the issues that he faces, of which we could really only speculate, and we have speculated, I don't think those issues would have gone away miraculously. It's not, his issues aren't simply that you've enabled his lack of financial responsibility. There's something deeper. He started on this road when he was 50 years old. He was almost but I mean,
no.
You started giving him money when he was 50 years old.
Oh, Oh yeah, even longer than that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so around our
in
age.
his like at our age. That's the thing that finally blew my mind. Look, dude, I'll be 50 soon. You're almost 50. Like, but when he was in his 50s, I remember thinking, because I was young, I was like, my dad, he's in his 50s. What could he do? He can't work anymore. What an insane notion. There's people that work into their hundreds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So this notion that if you had released him when he was, 47 years old from financial dependence on you would have changed something. I don't think it would have, because the 47-year-old men in Colombia don't just completely give up because they're being given money by someone. Like, if anything, they're like, okay, well, now I got back on my feet. Now I can actually get my career going, or I can get some other kind of thing going. There's something deeper there, personality-wise, addiction-wise, that is a huge barrier that he just would have transferred, I'm guessing, dependence from you to someone else. Like, there would have been some other avenue for him to, I don't know how to phrase it, but sustain his sort of defenses, let's just say.
So on the
whatever
one hand,
those were.
Right. So on the one hand, you're totally right. And in fact, that's what did happen initially, is that he was dependent on a lot of other people, and he transferred a lot of that dependency to me. Because before I was able to help him, I was a teenager, I didn't have money, right? He had other avenues. First of all, he lived with my grandma, his mom, so he had no rent to pay. And then he borrowed money from everyone. So yeah, absolutely. The problems were there. They were probably nearly insurmountable, whatever, who knows. But there are a couple things. Number one, like it drained me of resources for all this time.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, it's been painful. So, nowadays I'm in a much better place financially and all these things. So now it's like, let me put it this way. If it had started now, like we're in the last 5 years, like my dad got old, now I need to, like, of course, like I'm going to help my dad. What's going on, But I guess what it is that psychologically, I thought there was no choice, that I had no choice. And in fact, I remember having a conversation with my friend from Colombia, and he's like, well, of course you got to help your dad. You owe it to your parents. And there is that notion, like, well, they give us life. And look, I'm very grateful for my dad for the few years that he, I think, gave me some tools that I do love and enjoy having in my life. But still, here's the proof that some tough love was helpful. Because even though I did start supporting him, there came a point where I did finally draw a line, and I said, Papa, I said, Dad, look, I'm paying this and I'm paying that. I don't send you any more money, because he would say, like, oh, this other thing, can you send me? And I finally said, no. I send money directly to my aunt for the rent, and I send you this money, and that's it. And if you need more money, you need to start saving the money I send you, which is more than enough. Like, he makes well above minimum wage over there. Like, so I had to finally, and you know what? It took a long ass time, but he finally started saving money and not wasting all his money. And these days, now over the last maybe decade or 8 years or something, he finally has savings. And of course, it's all my money, but like, great, like he's not wasting it, So anyways, a little bit of tough love, or drawing some line, did end up being helpful. Maybe no help at all is also not the answer, right? Like, sorry, Dad, I know you're dying on the streets. There's nothing I can do. Okay, fine. But there are boundaries. And I think I wish I had better tools when I was younger to know how does one draw a boundary, and understand that no, a 50-year-old, a 60-year-old is not helpless. As an example, his older brother, my uncle, is older than him. And I remember when I finally put this together, I'm sitting there having a conversation with my dad years ago about money he needs and things. And I'm thinking, it sucks, but what is he going to do? And then the next minute we go to visit my uncle, who's just getting back from working on his farm. Like, working hard work, like pulling potatoes out of the ground. Older than I'm like, wait a minute. The fuck? kind of like I'm being used here in that sense, like I'm being convinced of a reality that's not real. Of course you can work. Anyways, so I have issues still with that, and there'll be things that probably will never get full closure. I've just been lucky that I did go to therapy, and I have this podcast, and I have had some conversations. So I've been able to make it so that at least these traumas don't constantly derail me to the point of extinction like they were threatening to 12 years ago, 15 years ago.
One of the messages that was given to you as a young person was love is not unconditional, and that at any point your parents can just say, nope, you're done. I don't love you enough,
That's so true, yeah.
And so as you're an adult, it's not like those issues just go away. It's not like those neurons just disappear. The desire for parental love and security is, greater than it is for someone who's raised well, And so you not only have made a deal with the devil with your dad by saying, well, if I give him money, it'll at least preserve some level of love and acceptance. He'll have to be nice to me. Not that he wouldn't have necessarily, but it's not that you
that's
could,
the subconscious.
But it's not like
math.
you could know that for sure, you know, given the way your mom dealt with you. But you've also made a deal with the devil with your mom in that you have said, well, pros and cons. I want a relationship with my mom that isn't horrible, because when you were, and I was there when you were hitting your mom's relationship head on, and you're not lying that every week it was a new drama, and you would just talk for, this is before the podcast, you would just talk for hours late at night. You would just be like, and I'd never, and I probably never have seen you so dysregulated, the deep anger and rage that you had towards her, and the way you would recount these conversations, it was like two angry spouses just screaming at each other, kind of a thing. And so you make a deal with the devil and you say, well, I can't get everything I want, which is my mom to apologize to me 10,000 times. That's not going to, heartfelt from a place of a mother who was actually apologizing to her child. That is unidirectional and, just undeniable, unconditional surrender of I'm sorry. You're not going to get that. You're not going to get her really acknowledging what happened. You're not going to get a chance to vent your feelings, but you are going to get some closeness, something that you didn't have when you were 10, with her. Right. So, sometimes those are the sacrifices you make to get through this thing called life, right?
Which means forever. That's a mighty long time.
Getting to Patron Francis's specific question here is, she wants to have it out with her parents, but she's hesitant because her parents have never been very communicative. So to address that is so the way you head into that is, like I was saying with a previous patron, is you head into it, because I've actually talked with a lot of clients about this, and obviously go to a therapist to talk about this, but there's this thing called Williamson's model of differentiation and personal power, which is that you start by interviewing your parents just like in a very, like a documentary kind of style. You head into, so your overall goal is to heal and to differentiate and to find your own power and your own assertiveness. And that's the end goal. But you can't get there without going through the steps. And step one is you engage your parents in asking them very mundane questions. Like, I just want to know more about your life. What was it like when you were growing up? I never knew what it was like. What was your dad like? What was your mom like? What was your siblings like? And you really come across very certainly that you are not trying to dig up any dirt, and you're not trying to catch them on any problems, and you're not there to confront them about their bad parenting. Because if you're any of those things for the uncommunicative parents, they're going to clam up and they're not going to want to talk to you. So you just ask them about your life. So this does two things. One is it builds trust, which allows you to maybe ask them more difficult questions down the line. But the other thing is you might not have to ask those questions, because as they talk about their life, they sometimes will answer questions that you didn't even know you had. You learn about their childhood, and you're like, oh, I know why you're like this now. Like Berto with your mom and dad, I'm guessing you do know something about their childhood. Once you start to learn those things, even without them apologizing or explaining to you, you might be like, oh, I know why you abandoned me. It's because your parents abandoned you when you were a kid, or you were abused, or, something along those lines. Now I know why you're so cold with me, because no one ever was warm with you. And, it's not personal to me. It's just, you're just generally not warm because no one was warm to you growing up, that kind of thing. And so sometimes just by asking and creating a space where you're gathering information about your parents' life and how they see their childhood in particular, sometimes that's all you need. But like I said, if it builds a close relationship where your parents actually trust you, down the line you can start asking, so why did you leave me? The way Berto did.
By the way, to your point, that actually was really helpful. I didn't know this system. Like, I wasn't doing this really methodically. I wish I had known that. But with both my mom and my dad, I did learn things that helped me have some empathy for where they came from, and therefore understand a little bit better. Of course, it doesn't make everything better, and it doesn't necessarily excuse things. But so, for example, with my mom, I learned that she was sent to like a convent school kind of thing, essentially like what are those called? Like where she was not living with her parents.
Boarding school.
A boarding school with nuns.
Yeah.
And for apparently a long time of her when she was young. And
wow.
Yeah, like, can you imagine?
Yeah, that's abandonment.
That's right. And so that was one thing. And there was other things I learned that I don't want to air on the air, but basically helped me explain why she would have difficulty developing closeness with someone. And then my dad, I learned a couple of years ago, he was telling me, and again, I wasn't trying to, but we were having a conversation, and I learned that he had been severely bullied for years in the neighborhood he lived in. And that explained a lot of things to me. I mean, it didn't explain everything, of course, but I'm like, oh my gosh. He
right.
lives
and,
with...
Yeah, and I don't know if this is your experience, Berto, so tell me, but on the surface, it just sounds kind of like, well, whatever, you just learned some detail about your parents. It's interesting, and it explains a few things. Yeah, interesting. But what I find is that knowing that information and really hearing them embody the difficulty of it, it completely rewrites history for you, which changes your emotional depths. It's not just insight. It's complete paradigm shift of who you are, who your dad is, why your dad was the way he was, what your relationship was, who you are as a human being. You, through revelations like that, you can actually change the story from my dad, I am an abandonable person, meaning that I am not a good kid. I'm not a good person. That's why my parents left me, even though intellectually I know that's not really true. To change, from that deep sense to I'm a good enough person who was raised by broken parents who tried really hard and did a lot better than what they went through.
Yeah.
And I feel warm inside. I feel better about myself. Those kinds, that's what I've seen happen for people. It's not just intellectual detail. It is transformational and healing to hear that information from them.
That's how I felt about even just those two things. And there's been others, but absolutely. And it's kind of a universal lesson. A lot of times you emphasize empathy as a thing to have. And it really is true. Like Sam Harris actually talks about this a lot too, is this idea that if we totally treat others as things and we don't understand that they come from a certain place and they have a history, it's really easy to hate and to not understand and to have no excuses and to be uncompromising. And then as soon as you start actually adding backdrops and context, and of course, again, this doesn't mean you can break the law. It doesn't mean that you're going to excuse certain kinds of things. It doesn't mean we don't put people away that need to be put away, all those things. But it's really more about understanding, and that by that understanding, it's almost like, like you said, it changes the story completely. It changes the story from a monster came into our village and took all the food and attacked us, into like, oh, there was this person that was severely traumatized from war, and they came into our town, and they acted out, and now unfortunately they're in a mental institution. But it's like a very different story,
Yeah. Well, I'm glad for you in that way. And there's a whole version of group therapy that is centered around this, put forth by, I can't remember his first name, Donald Williamson. Personal Power. He published a book in the 90s that I used to assign to my students. He's actually from out where you live, Berto, actually.
Oh, really?
The other question here, that you say they're in their 60s and I'm worried that I'll only stress them out by bringing any of this up. I have no idea what this means. I mean, but so many people say stuff like this. What do you think? Bringing up, your life and that you matter is going to cause a stroke? It's just not going to happen. Now, if they're, if they don't exercise and they're prone to strokes and they're not putting it, and they have high blood pressure, and then you run up and scare them and say, like, I want to talk about our history. And I suppose under extremely, particular circumstances, your conversation with your parents could be the final straw that would hurt them at their frail age. But having emotional conversations is not a reason that people die. There's no there's no death certificate that says, reason of death, daughter asked personal questions. You know what I mean? It's just not going to happen. So
I don't know. I've seen a lot of headstones like that.
Yeah. So now, of course, I can't know that for sure. I'm not a biologist, but I hear this a lot. And this is a defense that is often propagated through families, which is, don't stress out your parents. They're old. And this is all just an effort for status quo of don't rock the boat. You don't matter. To assert yourself is to harm other people, and that is just not true. You have the right to say whatever you want to say. You have the right to express whatever you want to express to your parents. And a lot of parents want it to happen. Think of the potentials here. One, if you do it right, you don't just run up on them and yell at them. If you actually take the time to ask the questions about the history and then you slowly start going down that road, like with Berto, the relationships will be better, which is actually going to help them be less fragile physically moving forward. And emotionally, they're looking for this. Now, it's not without its trials and tribulations, but you go through it enough, again, with therapist guidance, and 5 years down the road, there could be wonderful things that can happen from it. And one of the 100 wonderful things that happens is that you get an opportunity to voice your feelings and be heard and validated. Maybe you won't be validated, but you'll get a chance to get your voice out there.
Right.
So just the fact that they're in their 60s, in a sense, me and Umberto are almost in our 60s. And I don't think that when we're in our 60s, we're going to be so fragile that someone can't confront us on something. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Speaking of that, dude, I just found out yesterday that 2 nights ago, maybe 3 nights ago now, Liti, my grandma that you met, she took a fall.
Oh, she's like 93 or something.
She's 93, dude. Yeah. So this is super scary.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Here's what happened. It was
their house has like 10 stories.
And it's all like when you get down, like the stairs are like marble stairs with that land on hard. Okay, it was 11 o'clock at night. For some reason, she doesn't remember. She was going downstairs, and she came downstairs, and luckily it was the last step, but she missed the last step. Fell forward, hit her head against like the part of the door. But here's the really brutal part. She lost consciousness, and she was lying there with a deep cut in her head, pooling blood. And thank goodness, for some bizarre reason, my grandpa, who normally is fast asleep at that time, he heard the TV was still on. So, by the way, who knows how long it had been between when she fell. And so he went downstairs to see what's up. And he found her there. Imagine finding your 93-year-old wife unconscious well, you don't even know, like there's a pool of blood in the middle of the night.
Oh my God.
So he started screaming for help and all these things. And, my grandpa is even older and he gets confused and oh my gosh. Luckily, like just so luckily, they called the watch people in the neighborhood, because there's people that watch the neighborhood. They were able to see that my grandpa was trying to get into the street to call a cab, and they were able to be like, what happened? So they called my aunt, and for some bizarre other stroke of luck, even though her phone was off, or the sound was off, she woke up because of the light, and then she was able to like realize that they had to go over immediately. They took her to a clinic. She, again, for some crazy stroke of luck, didn't break anything, didn't have any concussion. And then she was back at home yesterday.
She had a concussion.
She didn't have any, like, they did all the checks, and she was well enough that they didn't have to hospitalize her.
Right.
And they sent her home, and I talked to her yesterday, and she's in a ton of pain because she's sore, but she didn't break anything.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh, dude,
Well, because it's just the two of them there, right?
Yeah, so that's over. This is the last. We already were like, this is ridiculous. Just that she kept refusing help. This is over. It's now, we're absolutely putting a full-time.
But I can see it on one level, because if you just, watched her for a couple hours as she makes dinner for 15 people in her large, kitchen, you'd think 65, maybe 70, not 93. So there's that. And
that's true.
Your grandfather looks spry and, looks able, but his brain is, not doing so well. But he's happy all the time. And so from the looks of it, it always looks like, they can do it. But you get the story. So what's going to happen?
We are getting a full-time employee.
They're not moving in with you?
Moving them up from Colombia. No, I wish that I could visit them right now. That's the other thing, is I can't, even if something happened right now, like I can't travel to Colombia right this second.
Right.
This is crazy. So anyway, we're going to get a full-time person. She's going to be COVID tested, and she's going to live there. And,
What about that one servant that they have?
Yeah, she's just not able to be there the whole time. She's got a family in a different place and things like that. So, yeah.
Kind of like Roma.
Yeah.
That terrible movie.
You.
Well, everyone, comment below. What do you think about what we're saying? Or go to our website, fill out the email form. Let us know. We've talked about a lot of things.
We did. Covered a lot of ground.
So, Racist Immigrants, Berto's YouTube channel, Star Wars Episode 9, writing music, exes, being friends with your exes. Your ex comes out of the woodwork, breaking up in an ethical way, being angry at your parents. You got to have at least one thought on one of those things. So comment below, let us know what's going on. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself. And please, for the love of God, do not fall downstairs, because
you deserve it.